Now, my next guest is the Hollywood star Nazanin Boniadi. Her list of credits range from Hotel Mumbai, Iron Man, Counterpart and Homeland. But the British-Iranian actress is also a long-time campaigner for human rights in Iran. She's just back from Calais in France, where she's been meeting those who fled the Tehran regime. She's also been campaigning for the release of the British woman Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, the story we were covering on this programme yesterday. So, Nazanin Boniadi, welcome here to the programme. Why don't we start with what you've been doing in the last few days in Calais? I mean, how many of these asylum seekers are there in Calais in these makeshift camps, and what are conditions like?
Well, the conditions are demoralising and inhumane. There are about 1,000 people there at the moment, asylum seekers, from places like the Gambia, Senegal, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan. And I had the chance to interact with many of them. Because I'm a Persian speaker, I was able to communicate mostly with the Iranians. And they're in dire straits. They're fleeing persecution in their homeland, caught between an international community that rejects migrants and is intolerant towards migrants, and a homeland that's no longer tenable.
And these are some of the pictures from that visit. I mean, you've worked for many years, or worked with Amnesty, highlighting the plight in Iran. Just from that sort of work, from these sorts of conversations, what are people actually fleeing from?
Well, it's religious and political persecution, and my parents were, granted political asylum to the UK from Iran in 1979. So this is deeply personal to me. And many of them are families, but many of them are single men who left their families behind and familiarity behind to face a very uncertain future. And this organisation that I went with, Care for Calais, is doing extraordinary work to hand out goods. We volunteered. We handed out tents, shoes, clothes, tea, haircuts, and many things that they are lacking and need.
Now, around Christmas time here in the UK, we had a flurry of attempts of people trying to cross the channel from these camps into the UK, with the pictures that we became familiar with from the channel. In America, with the Muslim ban, getting to the US is simply not an option. I mean, are you surprised by that, given the hostility from the Donald Trump regime towards Tehran, because these are people who've fallen out with that regime?
Yes, well, as many people know, I'm opposed to the Muslim majority travel ban for that very reason. We can't claim to support civil society in a country and then turn away the people of that country. My hope is that lawmakers across the world, the US, the UK, the EU and everywhere, pay attention to the plight of these asylum seekers and treat them as the human beings they are.
Do you see that, though, when you look at government responses, whether it's the UK, whether it's Washington? Do you see that? Is there anything that's giving you encouragement?
Yes, there is. There are always people in government that have, that common desire to help people. They may not be in power, or, may not be forming the policies at the moment. But I have hope. I have hope that we can steer them in the right direction. And sometimes when you look at these images, they do, and we put a little documentary together. We're in post-production right now, based on our trip. And my hope is that when people see these images, it impacts them. And
I know you've been meeting also with the UN Special Rapporteur on all of this. Let me talk about what you were doing yesterday, and we covered it on the programme with that news that Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe had been moved from the prison to a psychiatric unit. You were with her husband through most of yesterday. How concerning, how alarmed were you by those developments?
We're very alarmed. She's been moved to, as you said, a psychiatric ward or a mental ward controlled by the IRGC, and she's been severed from everyone she knows. Her family isn't allowed to be in touch with her. We want to encourage that she is granted consular visits, and she hasn't had any consular visits from the moment she's been in prison. And she is a British citizen. Iran doesn't see her as such because they don't see dual nationals. They only see her as an Iranian citizen. But mostly, this family has been torn apart for far too long. And
they have, but can you see any way of disentangling her fate with the wider political crisis around the Iran nuclear deal, around the tankers that have been seized? I mean, the tension is so ratcheting up, and that cannot make this situation, in terms of perhaps getting her home, any easier.
No, exactly. But the Minister of State for the Middle East said it best yesterday in the House of Commons. He said this is terrible for Iran's reputation. And if they care at all about how they're being perceived in the European Union, in the UK, in America, they need to change this. They need to release Nazanin and all hostages.
Whilst you're with me, let me just ask you a couple of quick questions about some of your film work, because Hotel Mumbai, I mean, you had some rave reviews in that film, only recently a few months released. We've been looked at it on our programme before. I want to just show a little bit from the trailer, first of all, before I ask you a question.
To the Taj, home to statesmen and celebrities for over a century.
Wow. Remember always, here at the Taj,
Thank you. We hope you'll have a good stay.
guest is God.
Oh, look at that.
Amazing.
I'd say your performance in this has got really good reviews, but let me ask you a broader question. Is it right that a film like this is made entertainment over a whole episode that is still so raw in the minds of so many people in Mumbai and broader in India?
Well, you know, it's any audience, any Indian audience that we've shown it to has appreciated it. It was screened in Mumbai for the people who were actually affected by this and their families, and they received it with great appreciation, which was very important to us. And the reason being is because it's a homage, it pays homage to the heroes, and it really is a message of unity at the end of the day. I don't think it's sensationalizing anything. It's very sort of fact-based, and also it's a cautionary tale of how we can overcome these things only if we band together.
Really quick question, because I saw you tweet or retweet something that Rami Malek, after he was announced as the new Bond baddie,
Yes.
something that he had said that he would refuse to get involved in any sort of religious role that was associated with that Bond role, and you supported him in that. Just explain why that is so important to you.
Yes, I mean, the Hollywood is saturated with those stories, disproportionately saturated. And of course, when I was recently in a show called Counterpart with J.K. Simmons, and I played the lead villain of the show, and I had the same concerns. And with the show creators, I had a discussion about not all of a sudden making my character a Muslim, baddie. And luckily, they didn't have any intention of doing that. And the reason I said that was because, you know, the vast majority of Muslims and Middle Easterners are peace-loving and good people, but we don't see that represented on screen nearly as much as we should.
Well, Nazanin Boniadi, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for your time and joining us live here on today's programme. Thank you.